Loyalty in the restaurant industry is a spectacular illusion, a sleight of hand performed by owners who pay minimum wage while demanding maximum devotion. You give them your weekends, your holidays, and the cartilage in your knees, standing on hard tile floors until your spine feels like a stack of bruised knuckles. In return, they call you family. But the moment a spreadsheet dictates that your experience is too expensive, that family will leave you starving in the cold. They won't even have the decency to look you in the eye when they do it. They will simply erase you, cell by cell, from the weekly schedule. I learned this the hard way after giving 9 years of my life to a brick oven pizza joint. But they learned something too. When you try to quietly bury someone who knows exactly where all the filth is hidden, you shouldn't be surprised when they dig up the dirt and bury you instead. The air inside Domenico's fire-baked used to smell like a rustic dream, charred semolina flour, bubbling mozzarella, and fresh basil wilting over hot marinara. For nearly a decade, that scent was permanently woven into the fibers of my clothes. I knew the quirks of the ancient baker's pride ovens better than I knew my own relatives. I knew exactly which corner of the walk-in refrigerator ran 2 degrees too warm and exactly how much yeast the dough needed when the summer humidity spiked. I was a fixture there, reliable and unquestioning. Then came the corporate buyout, and with it, a freshly minted general manager named Kalen. Kalen was a man who looked perpetually damp, sweating through the cheap polyester blend of his gray suits. He didn't know the difference between a San Marzano tomato and a jar of generic ketchup, but he possessed an ungodly obsession with profit margins. His mandate from the new ownership was simple: trim the fat. In his eyes, the fat consisted of veteran employees who earned $1 or $2 above minimum wage due to years of incremental raises. The decay of Domenico's was a masterclass in aggressive mediocrity. First, Kalen canceled the overnight cleaning crew, shifting the burden onto the closing staff while simultaneously cutting the hours allocated for closing. Floors that used to be scrubbed with industrial degreaser were now subjected to a hasty, half-hearted mopping with dirty water. Then came the ingredient swaps. The imported olive oil was replaced with a cloudy yellow vegetable blend that tasted faintly of plastic. The fresh mozzarella logs became pre-shredded, powdery bags of something that barely melted. But the most insidious change was the silent purge of the old guard. Kalen wasn't brave enough to fire anyone outright. That would mean paying unemployment. Instead, he employed the coward's tactic of constructive dismissal. My schedule, which had held steady at 35 hours a week for 9 years, suddenly dropped to 20, then 12, then 4. When I confronted him in his cramped, windowless office, he didn't even look up from his dual monitors. He just swiveled in his faux leather chair, tapping a pen against his chin. "I don't control the algorithm," he told me, his voice slick with practiced condescension. "The scheduling software optimizes labor based on projected sales volume. We just have to lean into the synergy of a leaner team right now. If you want more hours, you need to show more initiative." Initiative. I was the one who had spent 3 hours the previous night scraping carbonized pepperoni off the oven deck because his new, cheaper hires hadn't bothered to use a peel correctly. I reached out to the corporate human resources department, naively believing the employee handbook wasn't just a prop. I left 3 voicemails. I received 1 automated email response thanking me for my feedback and assuring me that Domenico's valued a diverse and dynamic workplace. HR was a ghost town, a brick wall painted to look like a door. As the budget shrank, the local wildlife moved in. It started small, a faint scratching behind the stainless steel prep tables. A dark speck darting beneath the massive commercial dough mixer. Roaches. Not the small, timid ones, but massive, armored scavengers drawn by the sudden abundance of food scraps left decaying in the grease traps and the unswept corners of the dry storage room. I reported the first sighting immediately. I wrote it down in the maintenance log, detailing the time and the exact location underneath the 3-compartment sink. The next day, I checked the log. The page had been cleanly torn out. I brought it up to Kalen directly while he was inspecting a delivery of cheap, bruised onions. I told him we needed an exterminator before it got out of hand. He laughed, a dry, dismissive sound. "Every restaurant has a few bugs. It's a commercial kitchen, not a hospital. Just step on them and get back to the line. We are not blowing this month's maintenance budget on a guy with a bug spray can just because you're squeamish." But it wasn't a few bugs. It was an invasion. Without the overnight deep cleaning, the roaches thrived, multiplying in the dark, warm crevices of the restaurant. They grew bolder. I would open a box of takeout containers and watch a dozen brown bodies scatter into the cardboard folds. The breaking point arrived on a busy Friday night. I was working the counter slicing a large pie when a customer flagged me down. He was holding one of the glass Parmesan cheese shakers. His face was a mask of utter revulsion. He didn't say a word, he just tilted the shaker. Suspended in the grated, powdery cheese were two dead roaches, their spiky legs clearly visible against the white dairy. A cold wave of nausea washed over me. I apologized profusely, comped his entire meal out of my own register drawer and took the shaker to the back. I slammed it down on Kalen's desk. "Look at this," I demanded, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "We are serving pests to people. This is a massive health code violation." Kalen's eyes widened for a fraction of a second before narrowing into a glare. He grabbed the shaker, unscrewed the metal top, and casually dumped the top layer of cheese, bugs and all, into his trash can. Then he screwed the lid back on and shoved it toward me. "There," he muttered. "Problem solved. Put it back on the table and stop causing a scene. And by the way, comping that meal was an unauthorized discount. I'm writing you up for it." The absolute brazenness of the cover-up left me breathless. I didn't put the shaker back. I threw it directly into the industrial dumpster out back, shattering the glass. The following Monday, I checked the scheduling app on my phone. My row was a sea of blank white squares, 0 hours. The next week the same. By the third consecutive week of not being scheduled, the message was violently clear. They had starved me out. They assumed I would just quietly fade away, find another job, and let them continue running their miserable, infested kitchen into the ground. They vastly underestimated my memory, and they fundamentally misunderstood the danger of an employee who has nothing left to lose. I didn't just want Kalen to get a stern talking to. I wanted the entire rotten structure to collapse. I sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and drafted a message to the city's Department of Public Health. But I didn't write a generic complaint. I wrote a tactical dossier. I knew Kalen's routine. I knew that whenever the health inspector did their random annual check, it was usually in the morning. Kalen would have the morning crew quickly sweep the obvious areas, and the roaches were largely dormant under the bright daylight fluorescent bulbs. If the inspector came then, they might just see a dirty floor and issue a warning. I needed the inspector to see the nightmare in full bloom. I instructed the Department of Health to arrive exactly at 3:30 in the afternoon. This was the dead zone between the lunch and dinner rushes. The kitchen lights were usually dimmed to save electricity, the ovens were turned down, and the kitchen was quiet. This was when the roaches crept out of the walls to forage. Furthermore, I provided a treasure map. I didn't just say the restaurant had bugs. I gave them precise coordinates. I told them to unscrew the metal casing of the dough mixer motor. I told them to lift the loose ceiling tile directly above the flour bins in dry storage. I told them to check the hollow metal legs of the middle prep table, where the end caps had fallen off years ago, creating a perfect dark breeding tube. And most importantly, I explicitly told them to empty every single Parmesan and red pepper shaker on the dining room tables onto a white plate. I hit send. It was entirely anonymous, untraceable. Then I waited. I still kept in touch with Tavish, a line cook who was also suffering from reduced hours but hadn't quite been zeroed out yet. 2 days after I sent the message, my phone buzzed with a text from him. It was a single word, carnage. I called him immediately. He answered from the alley behind the restaurant, his voice a mixture of awe and panic. Tavish painted a vivid picture. The inspector, a stern woman with a clipboard that looked more like a weapon, had walked in exactly at 3:30. Kalen had deployed his usual greasy charm, offering her a free slice and trying to guide her toward the newly wiped front counter. She ignored him entirely. She walked straight into the kitchen, pulled a high-powered flashlight from her belt, and went directly to the middle prep table. According to Tavish, she didn't even look at the surface. She crouched down, shined the light up the hollow metal leg, and tapped the side with her pen. A swarm of brown bodies cascaded out onto the tile floor. Kalen's face drained of all color. She moved with surgical precision. She hit the dough mixer. She checked the dry storage ceiling. Every single location I had specified yielded a horrific bounty, but the killing blow happened in the dining room. The inspector marched out to the floor, gathered 6 cheese shakers, and unscrewed them onto an empty pizza tray. When the pulverized remnants of roach shells tumbled out among the cheap cheese, the inspector stopped taking notes. She took out her phone and started taking photos. Kalen was stammering, sweating profusely, claiming it was an isolated incident, blaming the suppliers, blaming the building owner. The inspector didn't argue. She simply walked out to her car, retrieved a massive neon-orange placard, and taped it to the inside of the front glass door. Grade B, but she didn't stop there. Because the infestation was inside the food contact surfaces, the shakers and the mixer, it constituted an immediate, severe hazard. She handed Kaylin a bright red notice of closure. The restaurant was legally mandated to shut its doors until a commercial exterminator could clear the building, and a secondary, rigorous inspection was passed. Tavish laughed darkly over the phone. Kaylin is in the office crying, he said. The district manager is on his way down here right now. I thanked Tavish and hung up. A deep, settling calm washed over me, the kind of calm that only comes from perfect, symmetrical justice. The fallout was swift and merciless. The closure of a flagship location made the local evening news, complete with high-definition footage of the neon orange B and the red closure notice. The public humiliation was absolute. Corporate couldn't hide it, and they certainly couldn't blame it on the algorithm. Verk, the district manager who had approved Kaylin's budget cuts, arrived at the restaurant only to be met by angry customers demanding refunds and local health officials demanding answers. The corporate office went into full damage control mode. They needed scapegoats and they needed them fast. 3 days later, I received an automated email from the scheduling app. It wasn't a schedule update. It was a notification that Kaylin's administrative account had been deactivated. A follow-up text from Tavish confirmed the beautiful truth. Kaylin had been terminated for gross negligence and violation of health codes. Verk, the district manager, was forced into an early, unceremonious resignation by the end of the week. They had tried to save a few pennies by firing the night cleaners and starving out the veteran staff. In the end, it cost them thousands of dollars in extermination fees, weeks of lost revenue, catastrophic damage to their brand and their own careers. The restaurant remained shuttered for nearly a month. When it finally reopened, it was under entirely new management, with a brand new cleaning crew that scrubbed the floors every single night. I never went back. I found a job at an independent bakery across town where the owner actually knows how to temper chocolate and pays a living wage. Sometimes on my drive home, I take a detour past Domnico's. I look at the bright lights shining through the clean front windows and I smile. There's a valuable lesson hidden in the grime of a commercial kitchen. It's easy to look at a spreadsheet and view your employees as disposable numbers, as line items that can be cut to appease the bottom line. But numbers don't clean the grease traps. Numbers don't catch the mistakes. And numbers certainly don't know the phone number for the Department of Health. When you mess with the livelihood of the people who hold the foundation of your business together, you better make sure your house is entirely clean. Because if you push us into the dark, we know exactly what kind of monsters are waiting in the shadows, and we have no problem turning on the lights. If you enjoyed this story of corporate karma, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share your own toxic workplace revenge stories in the comments below. Until next time, stay sharp and never let them treat you like you're expendable.